The URC just keeps delivering. My name's Mark. Let's talk rugby. I think it's only going to be in a few years when we look back that we're going to realize what a bonkers season this really was. Like, even in the moment, it just seems crazy. But I think, perspective will maybe actually make us realize how truly nuts this season has been. Things still really tight, but some very important results at the weekend as well. What we're going to do as usual is going to go through each of the games. We're not going to spend too much time on them because I've covered their full-length reviews of 4 of the 8 games already on the channel. So I want to keep, I'm not going to say keep this short because it's never short, right? You know me. But maybe a little bit shorter than normal. But we will then have, a closer look at the table. And then, we'll talk about, how each team is kind of sat going into the final 4 rounds of games. So I'm going to start with the Friday night fixtures. So the first one up was Ulster 38, DHL Stormers 34. So Stormers off to pretty much a perfect start. Evan Roos gets over for a try converted for Feinberg and Gomazulu. He then drops a goal on 5 minutes. Then Loader gets over for their second try on 6 minutes, and then that's converted as well. So, they're already 17 points to 0 up, within 8 minutes or something it was of the start. So brilliant start for Stormers. And then Ulster have been so fragile this season, you thought, well, maybe they're going to get absolutely destroyed in this one. But Ulster started to mount a comeback then. So we see Balakoon get over for a try. Unfortunately now, we heard he's injured for another extended period of time. That's a real shame with that guy because he's a fantastic player, but he's going to be another one of these who will only see glimpses of him, I think, for much of his career, and will be left wondering what could have been. Because I remember I went with my wife, and it was during the COVID pandemic. We went to see Ireland versus the USA, and Balakoon played in that game, and he scored a hell of a try. And that one, and just seeing the guy up close, you just realize how much talent he has. So it's a real shame, that it looks like he's going to be out, probably, likely for the rest of the season, honestly. But he's over for Ulster's first try of the game. Then Warwick gets over on, with about 10 minutes to go to half time, and Ulster, beginning to come back a little bit. Then Feinberg and Gomazulu goes to the bin, and Murphy gets over for Ulster's third try. And, they're looking a little bit better now, 3 tries on the board. And I think they just about were edging it at half time. Then into the second half, then Ulster start to pull away a little bit. So we have Stockdale over for the fourth and the bonus try for them. Then Fouché gets a red card, and it was I think, it was like a clear out, right? Wasn't it? Yeah, it was like head on head, or the 2 players very low, but he was deemed that it was a dangerous play. There was no mitigation with it, and I think it was deserved red card. And it was actually, we saw a carbon copy in one of the other games we're going to talk about later as well, but he's off for that. And then shortly after, Fernberg and Gomazulu drops his second drop goal of the game, and gets them, keeps them kind of in touch, especially when you think at that time they're down to 13 players. But then Ward gets over for Ulster, followed by then Engelbrecht over for the Stormers as they're trying to mount a bit of a comeback. But then Moore gets over for Ulster's 6th try of the night, and looks like at that stage Ulster maybe won the game, but then Stormers, fair play to them, they're not giving up in this one, and Roos gets over for his second try of the game, and his performance in a losing side was excellent. Same with Fernberg and Gomazulu as well. That guy had a great game, and there was a lot of good players actually on the Stormers side, but they couldn't come up with the win in the end. And Ulster as well, their attack looking so much better, so much sharper, and the highlights of this definitely worth checking out. There's some brilliant tries scored by both teams as well. Lots of attacking flair. Ulster being able to kind of counter a lot, picking holes up the middle and then going to width for a lot of their scores as well. With final scores, Ulster 38, DHL Stormers 34. Okay, on to the next one then, the other Friday night game. Not as close. Edinburgh 38, Dragons 5. So Edinburgh, takes them a little while to break Dragons down, but once they do, the floodgates going to open. Harrison, gets 2 tries in 3 minutes coming up to the end of the first quarter. And then Graham gets over for their third try. That's before Hewitt then goes to the bin. So Dragons down to 14. And then Pierre Skuman gets over for the bonus point try just before half time. In the second half then, Dragons only score by Wainwright. I wouldn't say gives them a glimmer of hope, because they were never really in this one, honestly, but at least they got them on the board. And then towards the end, then Edinburgh kind of blow out to score a little bit. Venter gets over 50 minutes to go, and then a couple of minutes to go to the end. Curry is over for their 6th try. So good win for Edinburgh. Dragons, I thought they'd be a little bit better, honestly, in this one, that they wouldn't lose by that much. But, because they have been showing some signs of improvement recently, but maybe on the road still, a little bit kind of mentally weak, I think, in terms of just heads going down once the scoreline gets built up by the opposition. But yeah, final score, Edinburgh 38, Dragons 5. Okay, on to the next one then. Vodacom Bulls 63, Zebre Parma 24. So another bit of a blowout in this one. But early on, it wasn't too bad. We got, first of all, Bulls get off to a great start. Peterson on 2 minutes gets over. Then Berger over about 10 minutes later for their second try. And then Zebre respond. Trula is over for their first try of the game. And then Fusco drops a goal not long after. So, they're 14... 14-10 behind at that stage, looking like they're kind of going to be in it a little bit, but then, the Bulls get another couple of tries. So Jacobs over on, with about 10 minutes to go to half time, about 5 minutes later, them Vessels over for their bonus point try. And it looks like, they really are stretching away, but Montemaori gets a try just before the break as well for Zebre. So they're staying a little bit in touch, but it's one of those ones where, they come back a little bit and Bulls are pulling away, and it's happened for much of the game, and Bulls were just kind of extending that margin all the time. So into the second half then, Van Staden gets over for the Bulls. Then Van Herden goes to the bin for them, but doesn't have a major effect, because although Zebre did get their third and final try to, it was Di Bartolomeo, I think, scored during that yellow card period. But then the Bulls hit back. Kotsia gets over for them as well, just before I think that they went back to 15. So kind of keeps that margin up for them. And then in the last 15 minutes then, Vorster, Peterson with a second, and then Creel all had tries as well. And final score, Vodacom Bulls 63, Zebre Parma 24. So, decent win for the Bulls. We've seen it from them a lot though. This time of the year, they like at home, deliver some stonking performances, really put big scores on teams, but it always feels like they peak a little bit early because they kind of lose that momentum as they go into the playoffs then. So maybe this year, going to be the same kind of issue for them. But, if they can maintain this kind of form all the way through into those playoffs, then, this could finally be their year because they come so close so many times. So final score for the Come Bulls 63, Zebre Parma 24. Okay. Next then, another game that there's a full review on the channel. So Connacht 24, Munster 30. This was another very entertaining game, to watch, especially in full. But again, if you can only check the highlights out, definitely check those out. So, Crowley opens the scoring from the tee for Munster. And then not long after that, Ahern gets over for try. Ahern, that guy, I'm not sure why he's not, being fast tracked into kind of the Ireland setup. Hopefully in the summer he will, because he's such an athlete. He's one of those players who you can he's a second row. You can easily stick him in the back row, because he's got the athletic ability for it. And the guy as well knows his way to the try line. But he gets over for their first try, and then Connacht hit back. I thought Janssen had a great game. Barges his way over for a try, and a little bit of the kind of the Gavin Coombs about him, honestly, in terms of just being able to get over from close range, because he did it a couple of times in this one. But yeah, he's over for Connacht's first try and their first score of the game as well, on 20 minutes. But then Munster hit back. Craig Casey, who had a really good game at 9. I think that was maybe his return to Munster duty as well after being out, with that, was a hamstring, some kind of muscle injury, I think, for a while there. So, good to see him back and having a great game there as well. He gets over for Munster's second try. Then Nankivell gets a red card. And I talked about, the Fouché one. Nankivell's, I think, was pretty much a carbon copy of that. And he gets a red for that. And again, you can't really argue against it. Well, for me, I don't think you can. Obviously, if you're a fan of the team, there's lots of people who can argue, that it shouldn't even been a penalty. You'll definitely find people who'd argue that, and I'm not just talking about this one. I'm talking about any team to get a red card. There's always a fan of that team, who, to say rugby's gone soft, or, it shouldn't have been a penalty, or it wasn't a red, it was only a yellow, or it was just a penalty, wherever it was, right? But for this one, I think there won't be too many people arguing about, that red card. I think it was, well deserved. I think I saw somebody though arguing about, was it, I don't know, it was official ex-player or somebody saying that his knee or something made contact first. But he smacked the guy in the head. So, definitely a red card for me, but he goes off. Munster don't panic, and they actually manage the periods that they had, because they had 2 yellow card periods as well later, where they're into 13 men, and they managed all of those pretty well. And I guess Munster this year, one of my criticisms of them was that when they were playing against 14 and 13 men themselves, they really struggled to break them down. But I guess they learned something about that on the other side of the ball, because they were very solid. And then from here, the only score I think we get then before half time is a penalty from Crowley that stretches Munster's lead. Then into the second half, then Connacht, come back at them. Blade goes over for a try for them, but then not long after, about 5 minutes later, Crowley is over for Munster. Well worked try, that one. Then 10 minutes later, Byrne goes to the bin for Munster. Janssen smashes over for his second try of the game. And actually before that, Barron got over for Munster, right? Yeah, Munster actually got their bonus point try with about 20 minutes to go. And it was a couple minutes later, Byrne got his yellow card and Janssen got over. So Munster were, I think, at 30 points at that stage. And then Connacht started to come back at them a little bit. Then, less than 10 minutes to go, Ioane gets over for Connacht's bonus point try and brings them back within 6 points from there. And then 2 minutes to go, Scannell goes to the bin for Munster, and there was a bit of a scramble at the end in terms of Connacht trying to get that score that would win the game for them, but he couldn't do it. Munster got the ball off the field, and yeah, decent win for them. Connacht 24, Munster 30 is the final score. Okay, next then, Scarlets 38, Ospreys 22. So in this one, it was Ospreys actually making all the early running in this. So we had Morris in the first minute of the game, he gets over to score, and then Edwards with a penalty, about 5 or 6 minutes later or something. So they're already 10-0 up at that stage. Then Hopkins gets over, converted try as well from there, and now they're 17-0 up, very similar to actually the Stormers. Except it took them just a few extra minutes compared to the Stormers to get up to 17-0. And, it wasn't looking good for Scarlets at that stage. But then they start mounting their comeback. So Murray, who's been very impressive, he gets over for a try for them. It's not converted, but at least they're on the board. And then coming up to half time, we have 2 yellow cards for Ospreys. McGuigan, and then a minute later, Hardy joins him in the bin. So they're down to 13 coming up to the break. And then Fafita gets over for the Scarlets. That guy, special player as well there. Then still, I think, certainly during one of the yellow card periods, Roberts gets over. I think maybe Ospreys were just back to 14 at that stage. Roberts gets over early in the second half for the Scarlets, and then Ospreys are back to full complement. But then Scarlets then they start stretching away. And actually, I forgot, when Hardy went to the bin, they actually got a penalty try. So that Roberts one was actually their bonus point try. So already the Scarlets now, having been 17-0 down, as I said, in about 15 minutes of the game or something, by half time, they're back. I think they were, I can't remember. No, because they were missing all their conversions, right? They were back in touch, but they weren't leading, I think, by half time, because I think they had 17 points as well. So I think maybe it was all square at the break, as far as I can remember. And then the Roberts try, bonus point try, puts them in the lead. And then they start kind of stretching that lead. So James gets over, a few minutes later for their 5th try of the game, and then 20 minutes ago, 6th try from Plumtree. And they've got a decent lead on Ospreys at that stage. MacLeod does go to the bin with about 15 minutes to go, and during that period then Ospreys gets over for their 3rd try through Edwards, but they couldn't muster anything after that, couldn't get themselves, a try bonus point in the last few minutes. So Scarlets did really well to recover, from 17-0 down. And basically, they then went on to score 38 unanswered points before Ospreys then got their final try, in the last 5 minutes of the game. So fair play to them. And the games between these two have been, pretty pretty good watches, honestly, recently. Again, Scarlets, we talked about it, they've always had that ability to score kind of worldy tries, right? But last year that was generally in defeats, whereas this year they have that bit of dog about them. And again, I think if this had been last year's Scarlets team, they may have scored a couple of tries and got close to Ospreys, but probably Ospreys would have pulled further away, and maybe like the scoreline would have been reversed, based on last year's form of these two teams. But this year, the Scarlets do have, that bit of extra metal, bit of extra backbone to them. They were able to not panic. They worked their way back into the game by half time. And then second half, then they went again. They got the scores that basically delivered them the lead. And then, as I said, Ospreys just got a final try towards the end. But final score, Scarlets 38, Ospreys 22. Okay, next one then is Hollywood Bet Sharks 7, Leinster 10. So another one where there's a full review of the game on the channel. So go and check that out. There's some kind of interesting, obviously very low scoring game between these two. And Leinster, like last week, they picked a fairly decent side against the Bulls, right? And they came close to winning, like 84th minute kick from Creel to win that one, and denied them. But, last week they had the likes of Snyman, Slimani, Barrett, etc. But all of them were sent home, obviously prepping for Harlequins coming up at the weekend. So they had, had a mix of, young players and players who've been kind of stalwarts of the club as well in their lineup. So the likes of Cian Healy on there, but then you also had John McKee, who's a decent young hooker, Tom Clarkson, who's just broken into the Ireland setup, then Dermot Mangan and Brian Deeney in the second row. Alex Soroka, I talked about, he's a guy that I really admire, played with injury, kind of similar to Balakoon. And he actually got injured again in this one. But a guy who, when he does play, looks special. But then, you have, again, stalwarts, Will Connors, Max Deegan had an absolutely fantastic game from 8. He was the captain for the day as well. Then you have, young Fintan Gunn there. Kieran Frawley kind of being rehabilitated, to say, because, he broke into the Irish team, and then some really poor performances from him after heroics, in South Africa as well last year. Then things just kind of went the other way for him over November, and Six Nations didn't really get a look in there either. But he had a decent game of 10. Then Andrew Osborne on the wing there. You've got Charlie Tector, just signed his full kind of first professional contract with the province as well. Liam Turner, another guy, really good centre combination between them. And then more stalwarts, and Tommy O'Brien and Jimmy O'Brien there as well. So you can see the kind of mix of the players there. And again, on the bench, you had the likes of Michael Milne, who's been around forever, Scott Penny as well, Ross Byrne there too. But then players like Alan Spicer, who got on for Soroka actually in the last 2 minutes there. So big mix for Leinster. But we start off with, Leinster putting pressure on, and then Hendrickse ends up going to the bin, and McErlin, is actually on for an HIA replacement, because he started as 23, and he gets over in the corner to score. Nice pass over to him as well to put him in, and that's pretty much our only score right up until half time. Both teams defending well, kind of disrupting each other. Then into the second half, then Scott Penny gets over for Leinster's second try. And then, not long after then, Mbanambi is over for the Sharks. Hendrickson converts that one to make it a 3-point game. And you're expecting then, the Sharks with all the talent in their team, like we talked about the Leinster team, but like the Sharks team, like front row, Oxenche, Bongi Mbanambi, Vincent Koch. Second row, former Leinster player Jason Jenkins, and you got Van Heerden in there as well. Back row, Venter, Chituka, and Sia Khaleesi as well. Like, so talent everywhere there. Then in the backs, Jaden and Jordan Hendrickson as well. Two brothers there at half backs. Mapimpi on the wing. Andre Esterhazen, class player at 12. The elusive Julius at 13. Ethan Hooker, who is like, just play that guy anywhere in the back line, because he'll do it. Like, he won't just do a job for you. That's kind of downplaying his abilities. The guy is a great player. He'd slot anywhere into your team, is what I'm trying to say. And then you've got it's Pense. I can't remember how to pronounce this guy, but the fullback, because he had not the best game, honestly, but he is a talented player. So lots of talent in that team, but they couldn't find the score to either get themselves back level or to win. And at the end, actually, they had a penalty where they could have kicked for the post and tied it up, but they decided to go up the line, and it just didn't work out for them. Leinster kept them out. So final score was Hollywood Bet Sharks 7, Leinster 10. Okay, on to the next one then. Benetton 20, Cardiff Rugby 19. So in this one, Cardiff are the team who get the really good start. So Botham is over after 5 minutes. Sheedy converts that one. And then Albanos slots a penalty not long after for Benetton, to get them off the mark. But then about maybe 5 minutes later, Bevan is over for Cardiff second. Sheedy converts that. And it's looking like Cardiff are maybe, maybe gonna produce a decent performance in this one and go on to win it. But then a few minutes later, Albanos gets over for Benetton, converts his own try as well. So now they're right back in it, just 4 points behind. And then we have yellow card for Donnell as Benetton start kind of ratcheting up the pressure on Cardiff. Just before halftime, then Jennings goes to the bin and a penalty try is awarded to Benetton. So they have the lead at the break. Then into the second half, and not really much happens in terms of the scoreboard until the last 15 minutes or so. Like, we've no score for the first 25 minutes or so of the second half. But then Lloyd gets over for Cardiff to give them the lead. And it looks like, they're 19-17, I think, at that stage. Conversion is missed, but, it's looking like maybe they're going to see this out until the end. But then, what is it, like 4 or 5 minutes to go or something? Albanos gets over for Benetton, and Winnick goes to the bin for Cardiff as well. And then Benetton, just about get themselves, their noses back in front, and they're able to see that out to the end. So final score, Benetton 20, Cardiff Rugby 19. Okay, and then the final game of the weekend was just a complete blowout, one-sided game. There is a review of this one on the channel as well. So this was Glasgow Warriors 42, Emirates Lions 0. And Warriors, great form for them. They, you got Macbeth gets over after 5 minutes. And a lot of these tries really well worked from Glasgow as well. Like some, another one where definitely go and check the highlights out, because there's some really class tries in this one. But Macbeth is in for the first one. And then Dobie, normally a 9 is filling in out out on the wing, I think, and he didn't look out of place at all. He gets over for his first try, coming up to about 20 minutes. Few minutes later, then he's over for his second as well. And, some really good stuff there. And then he pops up then a few minutes later on the wing as well. And then he gives the final pass to Horn to get over for the bonus point try. Then they're not done before, the break. Hastings, who again had a fantastic game at 10 as well. He gets over for a try of his own, and he converted all the tries as well that Glasgow scored in this one. Into the second half then, Stain gets a yellow card for the Lions, and then Stewart, just after that, gets over for the Warriors' sixth try, and that's converted too. But that was actually the last try of the game, last score of the game as well that we had. Game kind of, petering out after that. Both teams, finding space or wherever, but not really, producing any finishes from there. Lions, I think, they would have liked to at least gotten on the board, but the problem for them this year really has been that away form. They built themselves into a decent position in the league based on the home form earlier on, but now that they've got to go away a little bit more, it really is kind of telling on them. And that's something that they're definitely going to work on, is getting more competitive when they travel up to Europe. But final score, Glasgow Warriors 42, Emirates Lions 0. Okay, so that's the results from the weekend. Let's see how that leaves the table then. So Leinster still at the top there. 13 wins out of 14 and just that one defeat, 62 points. So they still have a decent cushion back to Glasgow. Again, we talked about before Leinster went on their South African tour. Glasgow probably looking at previous seasons thinking we could close this up to within, 4 points or something. If Leinster kind of follow suit to the previous years and lose both of the games, what Leinster pulled off the win against the Sharks, and that could be a decent, I think it is a crucial cushion for them going into the last 4 rounds, which should mean that they're going to finish top of the log. Obviously, they could still slip up. And Glasgow, I think the form Glasgow is showing there in second place, they certainly will be in decent position to take advantage of it. But Glasgow there, 10 wins out of their 14 for 54 points, so 8 points back. Then in third place, Watercombe Bulls, 10 wins for them, but not as many bonus points. And they're on 50 points. So I think at the moment, it's hard to see that top 3, changing too much, other than possibly if Glasgow slip up, the Bulls could overtake them. But, the Sharks, I don't think are in good enough form to pressure the Bulls unless the Bulls really implode in the last 4. But the Sharks, they're in fourth place. They're on 45 points. And, they're kind of after that defeat to Leinster, maybe they now have to start looking over their shoulders a little bit more. Up until this round, in kind of this, since Christmas or so, they've been looking up at the Bulls and trying to chase them down. Now, they might be looking back at the likes of Munster behind them there, who are, coming up the table there pretty quickly. But fifth place, Munster, 39 points. Then we've got Ulster in 6th on 37. Benetton, 7th on 36. Edinburgh, 8th on 36. Cardiff, 9th on 36. So Cardiff, slipping out of the playoff places there on points difference. So they know they're going down to South Africa soon now. So they know that they've got to produce something to get back in there. But it's looking like maybe that's starting to slip away from them. But above them, you've got Benetton, who've been in patchy form certainly this year. They look like they're in decent form, and then they've had a few results where they just got absolutely tanked by the opposition, both in Europe and in the URC as well. So not immune to that in the last 4 rounds either, and maybe opening the door to others. And then Edinburgh, who absolutely blew their chance actually against Benetton last year to qualify for the last 8, when it looked like, they could have, if they got themselves maybe losing bonus point, they would have made it, but they weren't able to do it. They kind of imploded. So it's interesting to see if they've learned from that and are able to actually, seal that position in the top 8. Then we got the Stormers in 10th place there on 35. The team was slipped down a little bit this week, but because it's so close in the table, you lose, and then suddenly 4 or 5 teams jump ahead of you, and then the next week then you win and you go up 3 or 4 places. So certainly not out of it yet, but they don't look as good of a side as they have in the first 3 years of the URC. Even last year, like, they started the season badly, but they at least put a decent run together in the second half. Still a bit patchy at the moment, honestly. Then Scarlets, fair play to them, beating Ospreys, kind of reviving their hopes of making the playoffs there in 11th place on 33. Ospreys the same in 12th on 33 as well, but points difference. It's pretty much the points difference of the Scarlets beating them that has them, below them. Then you got Connacht there in 13th, lost to Munster, played pretty decently in that game on 33, but any Connacht fan will tell you their problem is consistency, not being able to, whether it's game to game or within the game, not being able to just perform consistently throughout. And, until they fix that, I think they're gonna be just missing out on stuff like this. So I don't expect Connacht to qualify for the playoffs, but you look at the kind of the last 4 games and you think, if a team can win 2 of them, they're going to be close. If they win 3, they're probably going to make it, but whether Connacht can win 3 of those 4 is another question. Then the Lions there in 14th place on 30. So we're starting to see a little bit of separation now. Last week, everything was just like teams on the same points, then just a point back, a point back, a point back. Now we're seeing like gaps of 2 points, 3 points, 3 points, etc. It is kind of, you're seeing teams now kind of fall away, and that's what we'd expect anyway. At this stage, that it's been so competitive, but when you get down to kind of the last 4 rounds that are coming up, it's going to be more and more difficult, because even though you're just a point or 2 points or 3 in this case behind the team above you, because of all the other little gaps up to the top, like the Lions now have 6 points to make up on Edinburgh in 8th place, whereas last week there was that difference between, I think that position there, 14th, and maybe what was it, 5th in the table or something like that. So a little more difficult for the Lions there. 14th, 30 points, and I think their away form really has cost them. And at this stage, they'd have to produce, I think, a perfect run in the last 4 rounds to realistically make the playoffs, I think. And then Zebre, it was nice to see them kind of getting up there and maybe showing that they might have the wherewithal to actually qualify. But I think at this stage, 15th on 27, I think they're out of it now. But they're still going to have, I think, a big say in how things are going to end, because they're going to be competitive against pretty much anyone else now. Their South African tour is done, and they've shown at home they can turn anyone over, and away they can be competitive against teams as well. And they've gotten away wins this year, so I think they're going to be like a spoiler team, kind of ruining other teams' chances of making the playoffs rather than making it themselves. But they've laid in a marker this year, certainly. Wherever happens, even if they lose the last 4, 5 wins for them in the season is fantastic. So, if those rumors of them being like basically binned off at the end of the season, if that's true, I don't know what to say, honestly, because they've been absolutely fantastic. They've done things the right way, and they should be given more time. But we'll see. Then 16th, you got the Dragons there on 9 points, and you have to say at this stage that's pretty much where they're gonna finish their season, because even if they won all of their games, right, 4 games left, they won them all with bonus points. So that'd be 20 more points. They'd be up to 29. So if they did that, if Zebre got a couple of losing bonus points, or even like just three bonus points wherever shade, then they can't catch them. So I think we can pretty much at this stage say that the Dragons are definitely going to finish in 16th place. But that's the table there. That's the results of the URC. URC now on a break. We're going into Europe. So we're going to have tomorrow night, I'm going to be doing the previews of Champions Cup last 16 and the Challenge Cup last 16 as well. So look out for those videos. Then at the weekend, we're going to be covering it's probably just going to be all Champions Cup, right? Because if there's a Champions Cup game on at the same time as the Challenge Cup, I'm probably going to pick the Champions Cup game to watch and to review. So we'll see how many of those we can do. Just thinking about it, I think it's probably going to be 4, honestly. I think it's going to be 1 on the Friday, because I think Northampton playing on the Friday. Then we'll do probably 2 on the Saturday, and then 1 on the Sunday is what I'm thinking. I might watch more games than that, but I don't think 4 is probably going to be enough to cover at the weekend, because it's a lot of work to do reviews of the games. And there will be, maybe we have games kind of back to back. I might decide, right, I'm going to review this game, and then I'll just watch the next game, and then I'll review the game after that, so that I can still watch the games, but not be under immense pressure to try and review everything. But we'll see what happens from there. But we definitely will have, whatever amount of games we review, we definitely will have a round review, probably coming out on Monday for the Champions Cup, and probably like the Challenge Cup probably as well. We'll do one of those too. May not be as detailed because I won't get to see as much of the action there from the Challenge Cup, and I may not even get to see the highlights of it. So we might just be talking about what the results were and what that means for kind of the next round from there. But lots of rugby to look forward to coming up at the weekend, and obviously lots of content coming your way as well. So I don't say it all that often, but if you wouldn't mind, hit that like button on the video and maybe post a comment, because stuff like that, for a small channel like mine, just getting that extra couple of thumbs up or whatever on the video makes it a world of difference. And I don't like to be saying it every time to people, but if you wouldn't mind doing it, it really would help me out. But whether you want to do it or not, I hope you do enjoy your rugby in the weekend coming up.